Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Adam.
And I'm Steve.
And today we're going to give our hot take on the game we just finished playing, Concordia. Before we jump into a description of the game, we wanted to remind you that when this episode is released, you still have a little over a week to be entered to win a copy of Frosthaven by Cephalofair Games. All you have to do to win is follow us on Twitter at BG_hot takes or on Facebook at Board Game Hot Takes, and you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and you'll get 2 entries. We'll be drawing the winner on May 1st from all the entries that we have at that point, and we'll announce the winner on the show as soon as we're able to reach the winner and confirm their mailing address. Good luck, and now let's jump into a description of the game. In Concordia, you play as Roman dynasties who are trying to send colonists to the far reaches of the Roman Empire in order to settle lands with the ultimate goal of pleasing the gods. Each player starts the game with 7 personality cards in their hand. On your turn, you will play one of those cards and perform the action indicated on the card. One card lets you move your colonists on the board and settle a territory for a cost. If an opponent has already settled that territory, then the cost is increased. Another allows you to cause an entire region, including yours and opponent's territories in that region, to produce goods. Another card allows you to recruit additional personality cards from a face-up set of cards on the board into your hand, and then those recruited personalities are replaced from a deck of cards. Another card allows you to trade goods from your storehouse for money or for other goods. And finally, the last card allows you to take back all of the cards from your discard pile that you had previously played. The game ends when a player has played out all of their settlements, or if players have recruited all of the personality cards in the deck, at which point all of the scoring happens. Each personality card that you started with or recruited indicates which god is represented by that card, and each of the gods scores for different things, like points for the number of colonists you have, or points for the number of regions that you have settlements in. Each of those scoring bonuses is multiplied by the number of cards that represent that god in your hand. The player with the most points after that scoring phase wins the game. Concordia was designed by Mac Gertz and is published by Rio Grande Games. All right, let's jump in with the conversation here. So let's start with the gameplay and mechanisms. And this was a first-time play for all 3 of us, so we did stumble through the rules a little bit on this gameplay. But let's talk about things that stood out to us. Adam, anything particular that stood out to you from a mechanism perspective?
Yeah, so this is a classic trading in the Mediterranean Euro game. But there is a significant amount of interactions, not just look down, do your own thing. Player action here involves being the first to build a building. If you're the first one there, you get to build for a little cheaper, a lot cheaper actually. So like if you're building in the cloth area, the price of that is going to go up by $5 for the next person that builds there. And then for the next person to build there, it's going to go up by $10. So it multiplies the cost of the building. So that's the same for all the goods. The cloth one's the most expensive one, and it's cheaper down for wine and the other goods. You also have the little routes. You can kind of block each other and get in each other's way. If there's a certain path that somebody wants to go, you can move your guy. And you can kind of block people out. And I'm sure there's some player action other areas in the game, but again, that's what stood out for me most. What about you, Steve?
I liked the deck building. I think that was one of my favorite parts of this game. I know it's not a lot. Our decks only ended up with 13, 14 cards at the end. That's really where your endgame scoring comes from, is building a hand of suits that match the actions that you took on the board. So it's a hard balance between collecting the cards that you want to complete your endgame bonuses and collecting the cards you want to advance your scoring multiplier. So, interesting.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. It's not really deck building, right? It's more of a hand management game, but you're adding cards to your hand, so it has that feel for deck building. It's not like you're ever drawing out of a deck. You have all the cards in your hand, and then you keep playing them until you play the one card that lets you draw the cards back. Mm-hmm. That was something on his first play that really took me off guard from a strategy perspective. Was, my first purchases from the market were cards that was like, oh, I want more of those actions. But I wasn't focusing on what were the scoring benefits for them, or even once I had a bunch of a certain scoring benefit, I wasn't focusing on the value to get there. So it's a pretty cool mix of the actions you get out of it, but also the scoring. And that's where really all the scoring comes from too. Pretty much is just the bonuses for the cards. So building up that hand of cards is important regardless of whether you need the actions for them.
Would you call that like a set collection? Was it kind of it's kind of cool because the cards that you're using for actions also are kind of like the set collection thing, or like scoring multipliers at the end game? I don't know what you'd call that.
Yeah, I call them scoring multipliers. I mean, set collection, I typically think of like you're trying to get cards of the same suit or things that match. And in this case, each of the scoring conditions didn't really score on the size of the set, although they did multiply your scoring benefit. But each of the scoring mechanisms was different. So one of them gave you benefit for having most of a certain type of building. So in that way, you're collecting a set of settling in certain places. But I wouldn't call it a set collection thing. But yeah, there was benefits for having more of certain things for multiplying those at the end of the game. Now, Adam, you had mentioned about player interaction, and there's a couple areas that you didn't mention, and that has to do with the hand management. One of the mechanisms I thought was pretty interesting was, already the hand management is kind of it's a mechanism that's been used in other games. I think a really common one is Century Spice Road.
Yep.
It's kind of a similar thing where you're building up a hand of cards and then you can play a card to get them all back. So that's been reused. But there's this one little mechanism that they added on, the Perfectus Magnus card, right? So the Perfectus Magnus card is a little card that the last player starts with. When they play the card that lets them produce, which was the Prefect card, they get a double bonus, a double province bonus for the goods it produces. Then that card passes to the person to the left of them. So it's kind of neat to try to plan around that and be like, I think Adam's going to want to use his Prefect next because he's going to get the bonus there. So I'll hold out my Prefect and hope that he uses the card and then it passes my direction. So you had a little bit of that. You having to watch what other people had played, what they were playing. The Diplomat card, which you mentioned, because you get to copy someone else's card, so you kind of want to hold that until you can get the best benefit for it, or not play a card because somebody else is holding their Diplomat and they want to do what you're waiting for. So there's a lot of player interaction there, especially as you get familiar with the deck and are kind of watching what other people have and what they've added to their deck and the actions that they have left to do. So yeah, I thought there was a pretty significant amount of player interaction for what is, looks and feels like a pretty dry Euro game. You definitely weren't playing multiplayer solitaire here. This is a lot of watching what other people are doing.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tim. I think 2 or 3 rounds into it, I was like, oh crap, I better watch what they're playing so I can see when I should play my cards. And that kind of kicked in and made it a lot more exciting for me when I saw that was going on.
One last place that I want to mention about player interaction, and that has to do with the Prefect action, the ability to produce in a province. Because when you produce in a province, everybody that's got production buildings in that province gets the benefit for it, but you get an extra added bonus. There's a province bonus. That was kind of cool to be like, okay, Steve's got a couple buildings in that province. I want to get a building over there because I know he's going to just feed me throughout the rest of the game. But also there is that concept of like, okay, I want to use my Prefect card and I want to produce in this province, get the extra province bonus. But if Steve produces there first, if he uses his Prefect first or Adam produces there first, they get the bonus, and then that card flips over, and you can no longer do a production in that province until somebody uses the Prefect to just take all the money off all the provinces. So sometimes you're just like, okay, I better rush and do this now before someone else beats me to it. Or there's a whole bunch of cards turned over and the money's showing, and you're like, I better use my Prefect card and be the one that grabs all the money before someone else grabs that big payload right there, and then they all flip back over. So, again, just one more place you got to watch what everyone else is doing and respond to it and try to be ahead of them a little bit.
The building mechanism was extremely throwback to Catan. I played a lot of Catan and also played Catan dice. You collect resources, you spend resources to build a building. I'm not complaining about it, but I kept getting some Catan flashbacks.
Yeah.
I totally got that feel, Steve. Like, oh, you get this, you get 2 brick and 1 wool and trade it in, you get to build this thing. I totally got that. And I was like, oh, dang it. At least there's no freaking robber. At least I don't have to roll a dice to see if I get to produce anything. So I was getting Catan flashbacks very much. That's a good point.
Well, there's one other aspect of the goods, and that was the kind of there's a market, right? Because you've got a trade action, and I thought when I was first looking at the rules of the game and reading through it, I thought that would be one of the least interesting cards to use, which is the one that lets you essentially, you play it, you get 3 coins, and then you can trade 2 different types of goods. You can either sell or buy them. But that was actually hugely valuable. You could essentially choose not to even build certain types of products and then use that action, and you can sell 2 silk and get $14 and then buy 5 wheat. So it was a pretty cool mechanism where you could kind of build up, but you had to watch for, and this is one other thing that I think this game may be a little ahead of its time. You had to watch for the spaces that were available to produce to in your little production mat, because there's only a certain number of spaces, and 4 of them are blocked off at the beginning of the game with extra settlers, or colonists, which you have to build. So when you do build a colonist, you not only get the benefit of being able to use it more, but you also unlock a new space. Scythe has used it in Terra Mystica and Gaia Project, where you essentially are taking something off your board and getting another benefit for it. And this is the first, I think, the oldest game that I've actually seen that mechanism used. Have you guys seen that in anything else that maybe came before that? Any older games that you can think of?
Not directly, but Viticulture, has some similar mechanisms there with limited space for each category of resource. And to free up a space in your crush pad, you have to move it to your cellar, and not directly.
Yeah, a little different. And actually, I think Viticulture was released the same year as Concordia, if I got my years right. I think this was a 2013 release. So yeah, I guess they're both getting a little old. You know what else? Well, I'll get to that in the production. Never mind. I was going to talk about what else feels old about this game.
Well, before we move on, I want to we mentioned it briefly earlier, the Diplomat card. That's a card you play, and it lets you copy any other face-up card that any other player has up, the last card that any other player played, which I thought that was a neat mechanism too. You're kind of waiting. Like, I only had one architect the whole game, but I had 3 diplomats, I think. So I kept waiting for other guys to play their architects. And I was like, oh, finally I can use a diplomat and take a little move my guy and build some buildings action, which is what the architect lets you do. So the diplomat card was a nice piece of interaction too, and kept you looking at other people's hands and what are they doing. So it kept you kind of into it too. So I always want to give more props to the diplomat.
Right on, yeah. One last thing I guess I'll mention that I can think of as a mechanism has to do with the personality row. Basically those are the extra cards you can buy. It was kind of a sliding row. So the first card, you just paid the cost on the card, but the next card you have to pay the cost plus an extra resource. And it gets to the end, and the cards in like the 6th, 5th, and 6th spaces actually cost you 1 or 2 cloth. And cloth is the most valuable resource in the game. So if you bought that card at the end, you're not only paying the resource on the card, let's say it's a wine, but you're also paying 2 cloth for it. It was a pretty significant cost to try to grab one of those benefits. I don't think I ever saw anybody pay that much for one of those cards at the end of the row, but I could imagine situations where that's going to be the most valuable scoring card for it, or there's one of those market action cards that can be pretty valuable over the course of the game. So I could see situations where you would do that.
I think I went there early, not to the rightmost, but the second to the rightmost, to go get one of those Mercator cards to get some more coin and some trade and some resource stuff. So that's the only time I went up there. And then there was that console card who lets you just buy the card without having to pay the extra cost at the bottom there.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of cool. That was a good reason to put that guy back in your hand, just because you could sometimes get those more valuable cards. Yeah, cool. Right on. All right, let's jump into production. Concordia is it's a little older game. I think it's kind of showing its age a little bit, but let's talk about production. Adam, anything that stood out to you from a production perspective?
It's maybe what you would expect from a mid-20 teens Euro game. It just has your little kind of generic looking tokens and resources. They're not horrible, but they're nothing special like what's being spat out today. Wood pieces, wood circles. I think they avoided any kind of wood cubes, but they have a little kind of generic shape for wheat and brick and the other resources, the wine. So they're kind of cute little wood shapes, but nothing amazing. A little single layer player board, I think, is in front of you, and just kind of muted colors of a game board. Sorry if I'm stealing everybody's stuff that they're going to say, but that's kind of a brief overlook of the production. Steve, anything jump out to you production-wise, or unjump out to you production-wise?
The cards were we played on TTS, which was already made things more difficult for me, because it was really hard for me to look at my own hand and look at my players' cards and look at the cost index. It would probably get better with more play, but it was pretty hard to read those cards. Like, okay, this one has a light brown border with a bunch of words at the bottom. Without zooming way in, it was really hard to read them. So they just weren't very distinctive.
Yeah.
Can I go back to the Catan link you mentioned? Aren't the houses the exact same houses they use in Catan too?
The houses, yeah, but at least those resource cards have had primary colors.
Yeah. But hey, can I tell you something that's funny? Kind of funny though. I was watching a rules video to play this game, and I looked down at the comments. And this was made back in 2013, and one of the first comments was like, "Oh my God, this game is so beautiful! I cannot wait to own this game." And I think standards have changed a lot, because if you think about it, I wonder if there were many games that were producing like unique, custom little wood resources for every type. I think there were some things that it was doing that was kind of a little ahead of its time. The map is pretty, but I think it's funny now in today's production standards that somebody actually looked at this game and said, wow, that's a beautiful game. I got to own it.
Yeah, I had no problem with the meeples at all. I thought they were nicely distinct, but the cards could have used a little touching up.
I'm disappointed that the meeples weren't screen printed on both sides, though. I'm kidding. No, they were actually totally fine. I agree. The cards were very dull, a lot of text on them. I thought that was actually one of the interesting things, kind of going back to the mechanisms, was that there was really only like 8 actions that you could do in the game, and the cards had those on there, and they're pretty spelled out. But even with the stuff spelled out, there's a lot of little edge rules that you need to know that the cards don't tell you. It wasn't drastic. By the end of the game, we all had it down pretty well. For example, the architect card says just move your colonists and build in cities adjacent, but it doesn't have the rules about like move colonists equal to the number of colonists you have on board or stuff like that. Like that's not spelled out on there. There's a few other rules. You kind of have to know the rules. You can't just reference the cards for it. With how much text there is in there, that was surprising. One thing I'll note about that though is that all of the rules, all those edge case rules that the game had, I think were valuable. I think they all offered value to it, even if it did trip us up a couple times in our first play. I think they all offered something that was actually, made the game more fun and interesting.
I think if we played this game again right now, I would be able to remember the rules instantly, like no problem. Because the rules make a lot of sense after one play, and it's something even if I played a month from now or 2 months from now, we pulled it back out, I would just be like, oh, yeah, that's right, I remember that. And then it would just flow right into it. It wouldn't be any trouble picking up the rules after like a quick refresh.
Yeah, agreed. All right, cool. Yeah, otherwise on the production, I'll just say that, it feels like of its time. I think it feels dated at this point. Like, it's a little disappointing. I've heard so much good stuff about the game, and I actually picked it tonight, right? I wanted to play it. But once I started watching the rules videos and reading the rules, and I was just like not excited to play it because it's just dreary. It doesn't look fun at all. And I honestly didn't, after reading the rules, I didn't think it was going to be that fun. 3 rounds in, though, I was like, this game's awesome. Like, I was having a blast playing it and trying to optimize the decisions, and it was tight, and you guys were getting in my way all the time. And I can see why people love the game, but the production is still hard to get past. It's a shame that there hasn't been like it probably could use a remake at this point, and maybe not. Maybe they're selling plenty of it, and it's nice to have that older style once in a while. But
I feel like everything you play now, Tim, is in the shadow of anachrony, so that's a kind of a tough shadow to get out from behind with its fancy mechs and gorgeous production. It probably dulls the production off of anything after playing that.
Actually, what it was reminding me of a lot was, which is kind of disappointing for this other game, is Beyond the Sun. And how Beyond the Sun, had some really cool mechanisms, but then the production was just lackluster. And that's a game that just came out this year. So Concordia, I can let it slide a little bit because of when it was produced. I would be pretty disappointing if a game like this came out now. I don't think it'd ever find a market for people to recognize it as a good game if it looked like this and it was produced. If it was created modern times.
I want to find the newest game that has this kind of production. I guess Hansa Teutonica Big Box didn't do much to update its cubes and relatively dry looking boards, but that's just a kind of a reprint of an old game that's, I think people appreciate it for its blandness. I think there might be kind of a hipster movement towards the bland early Euro feel again, so maybe that's kind of a revivalist.
All right, well, let's move on past production. So let's just talk about moments in play tonight. Any moments that stood out to you? Steve, why don't you start?
I don't have a particular moment that I want to talk about, but there were a lot of enjoyable moments in the game. There's so many opportunities to make small combos, to set yourself up for an action next turn, to set yourself up for a chain of actions. Even though if you follow that chain and people around you are maneuvering, you're going to not be as flexible, but you can plan it out at least and then decide. You don't even have to commit to it. You plan out your next 5 actions with your hand, and then somebody does something. Maybe you change your mind, maybe you don't. There was a lot of fun little card combos and action combos. The whole game. I had a good time with it.
Nice. Yeah. I'll just call out really quickly. I had one quick moment that stood out to me, and that was one of these player interaction moments. And basically, like, I was set up. I needed the specific resources, so I was going to take the production action, whatever it is, the prefect, and somebody beat me to it that turn. And there's like so many, there's like 8 different actions people can be playing. So the fact that somebody had to go and take the specific, region that I was going to do that turn completely threw off my next 3 rounds, because that was going to give me the resources I needed to then do my architect action and move and everything like that. And it was fun to just be like, and I knew that could happen, right? I knew that you guys could do it. Everyone would benefit from taking that space, but maybe there's better things you could be doing. And I was just holding out, like, if I can do this now and hold out. So that was fun for me to be able to make that decision every turn of just not like, what do I have to do, but also what do I have to plan around you guys doing from the cards you have in your hand. And that was one specific instance of it, but I had a whole bunch of fun little like aha moments that came up tonight. What about you, Adam? Anything that stood out to you tonight in gameplay?
Yeah, there's a couple that stood out for me. One of them was I had no architects, and I was like, oh, come on, somebody, please play architect. I need to do this right now. So, and then Tim, right before me, played an architect, and I was like, yes. So he did. And then I had to hold my breath and bite my nails that you wouldn't build in the little places that I was planning on building, because it was going to like double or triple the cost for me. And you didn't. You built somewhere else that I didn't care about. So it was awesome. You played the card that I needed a card. You didn't build where I wanted to build, and I got to do the things I want to do by using my diplomat. So that was one. And then the other one was where Steve took his market action, and he traded in like 4 chunks of cloth for $1 million. And both Tim and I were like, oh, that's how you use that card the right way. So it was like this kind of revelation moment about, oh, we've been boning this the whole game, and Steve is just going to freaking cruise right past us. And he totally did. He won the game by like a chunk of points there. It was just his grasping of the rules that probably helped him do that.
It always helps when everybody's playing by the same rules.
But those moments, that was cool to see. You know, I like that about a new board game, is the kind of the series of discoveries you're going to make. And there is going to be little rules hiccups here and there. But I enjoy that, being like, oh, this rule makes so much more sense now when you apply it correctly. And just, that's part of the fun to me of playing a new game, is the kind of the discovery of the game and the rules, little hiccups, and working through those. So those are some great moments for me.
All right, right on. All right, last question related to Concordia today. Would you ask to play it again? I'll start in on this one. I really love this game. I think it's great. To me, it's like Castles of Burgundy level of Ugly Euro with just a fantastic set of mechanisms on top of it. And it actually surprised me quite a bit. I mean, I asked for it. I've been wanting to play this game for a long time. And I liked it a lot more than I expected. It deserves all the accolades it's had. That being said, I'm not sure that I'm that excited about more dry, ugly Euros. Like I know it feels shallow, but I would happily play this. If somebody was like, yeah, let's play Concordia, I'm like, heck yeah, that was a fun game. But I don't see myself wanting to spend time in this world when there's so many great options where you get the whole package of great mechanisms plus a beautiful production. I don't know, that's a little bit of a shift for me, I think, just as I've been exploring more games. I just get the excitement and the fun out of really great components and great art and just more vibrancy and things like that. So that's my feel after one play, where I absolutely loved my play of it, but I don't see myself saying like, oh, let's get Concordia out. You know, it doesn't get me excited, even though the game was fantastic. So that's my take on it. Adam, what about you? What would you request to play it again?
I don't think I would. Same thing, Tim. Like, if I can have it all, why not try to get it all? And this game just lacks a little bit of the pizzazz, or, you know, the kind of the wow factor that modern board games have. Like, I could play Anachrony and get just as an exceptional experience with the kind of interaction that I enjoy, and the production is there too, and the colors and the kind of the different. Yeah, so this definitely falls in the shadow of like an Anachrony type of game for me, and kind of loses its edge because of that. Same thing, I'd heard so much about it, and I was really looking forward to playing it. Just kind of why the heck is everybody rave so much about this game? It was fun, I enjoyed it, but I would play it again, but I don't think I would request to play it again. How about you, Steve?
I'm going to have to second the opinion there. I liked it. I had a good time. But if I was going to pick a game, even if it was going to be a similar type game, I think it reminded me a lot of Power Grid while we were playing it. I know this is much more, has a lot more rules complexity, and the hand management's different, but it also doesn't have the auctioning that Power Grid has. So if you're going to just play a game where you're just trying to control the board to maximize your points for the resources that you trade in, Power Grid's less complicated, which kind of makes it a little more fun. And on the flip side of that, Scythe has some similarities to this and is a much prettier game, and it has a lot more flexibility in play options, I think. So I liked it. I wouldn't complain if somebody wanted to play it, but I wouldn't pick it.
Interesting.
Right. So Steve says Power Grid instead of this. Tim, what would you kind of lean towards if someone was like, oh, dude, do you have a game that's kind of like Concordia? Because I love that game. What's something that you might recommend instead of Concordia?
Man, I wish nothing's really coming to mind for me, to be honest. I think this game did some really interesting things in elegant ways that I really enjoyed. And I like thinking through the process of playing the game and learning the game. There's a lot of neat stuff to be had in here. And I don't necessarily have another game that gives the same feels, but it doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of other games that I wouldn't just pick over it to play. I just didn't see that link. Now, I've never played Power Grid, so I think that's an interesting one to call out. I'd like to try that now and see how that kind of compares to me. What about you, Adam? Did you have anything that you felt had given you a similar feel?
I'm trying to think. I'm kind of with you, Tim. It's unique, right? Like there's a lot of stuff it does that doesn't feel for me like anything I've ever played. I haven't played that many games, but I can't say, oh man, this is just like this game, except I think this game does it better. And maybe that's why this Concordia has had that slow build up to BGG, like
top games of all time, yeah.
Top 100 games or whatever. It's been slowly, it keeps rising up. I think it's in the top 30 or top 20 now, because people just keep coming back to it and enjoying it so much. So maybe that'll happen for me too. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think it deserves it. I honestly do. And I think another play of this would be super fun. I just don't see myself being like, hey, it's game night. We got all these other choices. This is the game I want to pick tonight, which is unfortunate because I honestly think it's because of the production is probably the only thing that's the biggest turnoff for me. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I think that will wrap up our conversation of Concordia. We'll talk about some other things we're interested in the world of board gaming right after this. All right, welcome back. So let's talk about some things that you guys have either been playing this week or you've been thinking about in games, maybe something you've heard about. Adam, let's start with you. Anything that's got your interest piqued this week?
Yeah, a couple things. I got a game in Omen, Reign of Terror, Reign of War. Oh man, now I feel like a moron. I need to look it up. But I heard about this game from Board Game Barrage. Kellen was talking about playing it. It's a little two-player card game. It's pretty quick, and it's fun, and it's dynamic. There's a lot of take this, take that, play this card, and it wipes out half the other player's cards or makes them discard. But it plays I can see it playing in about 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and it's just this tiny little box, so much thought, and so many actions you have to keep track of. It's a game by John Cloudis, and I think his publishing company is Smallbox Games. I think Tim's verifying that right now as I speak. So
that's right.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, and it is Reign of War. Omen, Reign of War is the name of the game.
Omen, Reign of War. It's cool. The art's great. It's just a little card game. So that's fantastic. And the other thing I've got my eye on, I don't want to hype it up too much, is called Fractal, Beyond the Void. And this is a game by Board Game Inc. It looks a lot like an iteration of Eclipse, which I am very much into. So do I need to replace Eclipse already? Probably not. But this game, the artwork and the production, some of the things that aren't there with Concordia are definitely here with Fractal Beyond the Void. Spaceships and quick combat and some cards that you're playing for combat. You have a deck depending on your faction and your units and how you deploy that deck against someone else's deck of cards. You can kind of build on that. Combat looks interesting and quick. And there's puzzles. It's kind of a legacy aspect to it. The game changes and new rules come out after every time you play. It looks interesting. Again, I don't want to overhype it. We'll see if it manifests into something great. I hope it does. But I've got my eyes on it. So that is what I'm looking forward to and what I played this week.
Did you say Fractal? Is that a Kickstarter?
It's not on Kickstarter yet. It's supposed to be coming here in 2021. I think it says sometime soon. They've been doing kind of a slow release of factions, this and that. They've got a video on how their combat works. There's some information out there on their website and on Board Game Geek.
Nice. So you haven't taken my advice yet of ignoring Kickstarter. You're still thinking about backing it and getting it in like 2.5 years and seeing if it's any good.
This one's blowing my mind. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna probably throw my money at it away.
Nice. Hey, now going back to Omen, I wanted to ask you. So have you played it a couple times, or just kind of opened it up and read the rules? I
played it against myself, and that's the only time so far I played. Hoping to get a couple plays.
I bet you won.
Right, I won and I lost, so I don't know. Yeah.
No, that's cool. I mean, does it feel like fiddly? I know some of these card games can have a lot to track and kind of be hard to keep up with, or does it feel pretty smooth and elegant?
It is pretty smooth. So you have 6 steps for each player's turn, and they go relatively quick. You can either draw 3 cards or 3 coins or any combination of that, and if you draw 3 cards or 3 coins, you get a fourth. If you go all cards or all coins, you get a fourth one for free. So you start there, and then you play your cards, and each card has a cost. You put it out there, you pay for it, and then you do whatever it says on the card. There's kind of these 3 cities, and you're trying to ransack these cities. And if you do, you get the little reward card off the top. So after you play your cards, you go and you do the phase where all these oracles get to activate, and that's kind of an engine builder. So your oracles all do a certain thing. Usually they get you a card or some coins. That's what they do. After the oracle phase, I think you go into I could be doing this wrong, but I think it's the war phase. So if you have 5 units, if there's a total of 5 units in a city, or if one player has 3 units, if your opponent, is the way it's worded, has 3 units in a city, then you enter the war phase. You just add up the strength, the red number on each card. Whoever has the most gets the reward from the top of that city. You can play 1 reward per round. That's it. After you do the war phase, you move on to the offering. So you can ditch a card, and you can get that many coins or cards again. So each card has a blue value on it, and that's the offering. So it's simple. After you do that, it goes back over to the next player, and they do their whole turn, and you're just kind of dueling over these 3 cities. And it's simple and quick, and it's pretty awesome. Really fun.
Cool. That sounds like it. It's just 2-player game?
Just 2-player game. That's correct.
Sounds fun.
So I've got just one thing I'll talk about quickly. I picked up a game that I've had my eye on for a little while. It's a little 2-player trick-taking game called The Fox in the Forest. I was interested in this because my wife likes trick-taking games, and me and us and some friends like to play them. So we play Hearts. It's always fun. They're quick, light games. You can kind of just chat away the afternoon while playing these card games. But they're always the fun little gotcha moments and the exciting moments where you manage to pull something off. So when this came out a couple years ago, and kind of a lot of excitement about it, I thought this might be a good fit for us. It looks like it came out in 2017. This was designed by Joshua Buergel and published by Foxtrot Games. And I think the whole gimmick with it is that it is a trick-taking game that you can play with 2 players. Now, most trick-taking games, of course, that doesn't really work. The whole point is that you don't know what other people have in their hands, etc. But basically, this game works like this.
Hey everybody, Adam here in the editing booth. I had to jump in here and give the listeners a heads up. Tim is about to try to explain the rules to Fox in Forest, and he does one of the worst rules explanations I've ever heard in my entire life. So I just had to give you a heads up. Here's basically the rules for Fox in the Forest in a much quicker fashion. There are 13 rounds in this game. If you win the round, it's called winning the trick. Score points based off number of tricks that you take. And the points are like this. 0 to 3 tricks gets you 6. 4 gets you 1 point. 5 tricks gets you 2 points. 6 gets you 3 points. 7 to 9 gets you 6 points. And 10 to 13 gets you 0 points because they're considered too greedy. End of the round, add up your points, and keep playing until someone has reached 21 points. And that's the game. Now, let's hear Tim's much more verbose explanation of the game, which gets to be slightly comical.
You both draw 13 cards, and so you're going to basically play 13 hands. And every hand is a trick, right? So you're trying, basically every hand is I play a card and you play a card. Whoever has the highest number of the, I hate to use the word, but the trump suit. So whoever has the highest trump suit card, there's one trump suit revealed at the beginning of the game, wins the hand. Or whoever has the highest of the suit that was just played, or if they have the highest trump suit card, and you have to follow with whatever card was just played. So it's very traditional trick-taking rules, but there's a few cards in here that have special abilities on them. So you might play, a purple 3, and so all I would have to do is beat that purple 3, but I don't have a higher purple 3, but I can play this card that changes the trump card, and then I've just won the trump suit or something like that. So there's all kinds of little cards that let you manipulate what's going on. But what I think is actually the most interesting mechanism of the game is the way that you score. So after you finish a 13 hand, 13 tricks, basically you're going to get points based on the number of tricks you've won, and you're trying to play to 16 points is the shortest game. But if you can win, I think it's 0 to 9 tricks, you're going to get escalating points from there. So not 0 to 9, but let's say 4 to 9 points is going to get you the most. 4 to 9 tricks is going to get you the most points. So if you get 9 tricks, you're going to get 6 points. But if you get 10, 11, or 12 tricks or something like that, you get 0 points. Also, if you get 0, 1, or 2 tricks, you get 6 points or something like that. 0 points. Point is, I got the rules all wrong here. Point is that you either want to have very few tricks, or you want to have somewhere in the middle, but you don't want to have Yeah, you want to have like 0 tricks or somewhere high in the middle section, but you don't want to have the most. You don't want to have like all the tricks. So in a traditional trick-taking game, like you can shoot the moon in hearts, right? So if you can just not win a single point in a whole round, then you can get all the points and everyone else loses points. This is like that, but because it's 2-player, it gives you a little bit more flexibility to just be like, hey, I'll just throw a few hands. Or I'll throw all but a few hands. Man, that's the worst description of the game I've ever heard for what is a fairly simple game. But basically, the point is that there's some interesting ways to win the points in the game. And then you play over a few rounds, and whoever gets the 16 points ends up winning. So, it's a clever little game. I would say on my first couple plays of it, it didn't really excite me too much. I think if we just are in the mood for a trick-taking game and it's just me and my wife, then this is the only game that you can do that with. I'm not sure how much it's going to get played though. I was hoping to get really excited about it and for it to produce these really great, exciting moments, and I don't think it can do that. But yeah, that's my take on it.
So Tim, are you kind of trying to describe? There's like a tightrope with a lot of these trick-taking games, right? Where you want to take enough tricks, but not too many, because you get penalized if you take too many.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So it's that tightrope. Is that tightrope of trying to like decide, okay, do I intentionally play this lower card because I know I can win these other cards later on? And I think that's the tightrope you're trying to describe, and a lot of people love, including myself, about these trick-taking games.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it does. This one happens to do it in a pretty neat way, where there's enough balance where if you can lose.
If you thought Tim was done explaining the rules, he's not. We get some bonus rules explanation right here.
If you can lose all but 3 or less tricks, then you get the full points. Or if you can win all but 3 tricks, then you can get the full points. But if you win all the tricks, or if you only win like 4 tricks, then you get almost no points. So you're trying to get that balance of either just like doing really bad or doing moderately good. And it's hard to do because the other person has some control about throwing tricks when they need to and stuff like that. So it's interesting enough. I'll give it some more plays and see if it's something that gets us excited to go back to it. But right now, I'm guessing this won't stay on my shelf for too long. All right, Steve, what about you? Anything that you've been playing or thinking about this week?
I've only played a few games this week. You and I played Castles of Burgundy a week ago.
Congrats on your big high score, by the way. Killed me on that one.
Yep, I went back and checked, and you actually have a higher score.
Yeah, my high score is up over 250 at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was a nice game. And then we played Parks this weekend. Always a good time.
Nice.
Have you tried the expansion for that yet, Steve?
No, haven't.
Okay. It's worth picking up. It's like $18 or something, and it just adds some interesting variety because the game it's fun and it's beautiful, but there's not a lot of complexity to it, and so it just adds some extra added decisions to it. It's a fun little expansion that's worth adding. It doesn't change the rules too much.
I know you have Trekking the National Parks, which is a different variety of game. But have you tried that since you've had it, and how was that?
That was actually a really good game. It's going to basically replace my Ticket to Ride series.
I thought that about Trekking the World, which we played. Now, did you play Trekking the World with us?
I think I did online. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we played Trekking the World, and then I played Trekking the National Parks.
How did National Parks compare? Was it was it pretty much the same gameplay, or was it just kind of similar?
It was extremely similar to Trekking the World. Slightly different concepts, but the mechanics were all very, very similar.
Cool.
Yeah, but that was absolutely my take on it too. I felt like Trekking the World, and I mean, I think we talked about this, but Trekking the World basically just like, yep, okay, I don't ever need to play Ticket to Ride again because it gives me the same feels, but I actually enjoy the game a lot more.
Yeah, you don't get stuck up as much.
Yeah, and it's just like less boring turns. It's not just about like draw 2 cards, draw 2 cards, draw 2 cards. Okay, and then I'll play a route. This one, at least, you're like move, get some cards, and pick up a souvenir. So you're doing more interesting stuff. Anyway, that's a rehash of what I've said before. I'm glad National Parks was just as good as Trekking the World.
Yeah, and then I got gifted a few little card games recently, which I haven't played any of them, but one of them, not coincidentally probably, is the Fox in the Forest.
Oh, really?
So
interesting.
So now that I have the rules overview, maybe I'll crack it open for Debbie and I to give it a try.
Don't use that rules overview. That was their rules overview. You'll be playing it and be like, man, we got this all wrong.
You'll have about a 25% idea of how to play it correctly if you listen to Tim here.
Well, give it a shot and let me know what you think of it. And again, I've only played it so far with my daughter a couple times, and that may have been part of what made me not too excited about it. So I would like to get it out and play with my wife and see if she enjoys it. So it may be something that I start to like more. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how that works out for you. It is a light, easy game that you really don't even have to think about while you're playing. So it does have that going for it if you're kind of, chatting or whatever, doing something else. I guess that's fine.
Yeah, there's a place and time for sure.
All right. Well, thanks. That will wrap us up this week. If any of you would like to get into the conversation and chat with us and tell us what we got right or wrong about Concordia or the other games we talked about, please hit us up on social media. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.